Previously, on days 1 and 2 of our Southeastern Arizona special. Starting in Green Valley, we made the trek east through the Santa Rita Mountains and Kentucky Camp, and made our way south to the US-Mexico border. We traversed the beautiful San Rafael Valley, visited historic mining camps, monuments, and climbed into our campsite in the iconic Arizona town of Bisbee. Today, we head back into Bisbee to tour the famous Copper Queen Mine before heading north to Tombstone for yet another underground tour. Later, we'll witness frontier justice before heading off on the toughest trail of our trip as we head in to the Dragoon Mountains.
With an early tour scheduled today, we were up at nearly the crack of dawn. We heated some water for a quick oatmeal breakfast before breaking down camp and packing things up. It was about 8 o'clock when we hit the trail and dropped into Bisbee. We cruised through historic town Bisbee before arriving at Copper Queen Mine. The Queen Mine, or Copper Queen, was the most productive mine in Bisbee's long history. Tours travel via mine train into the mountain. Donned with our hard hats, lights, and bright yellow vests, we were ready for the adventure.
The train roared to life as we plunged into the dark depths of the Queen Mine. Our tour guides, Dave and Steve, would be there to explain some of the interesting tidbits and sections of the mine. The Queen Mine was discovered by Jack Dunn, an Army scout who patrolled the area for Apache warriors and was financially backed by John Rucker and George Warren. The copper ore in the Queen Mine assayed at 23%, so high it was considered a literal bonanza. Gold and silver, among other minerals, were also found as byproducts and helped contribute to the overall riches of the mining process. Production rapidly increased as the area boomed with investors and miners from all over.
Work in the mine was dangerous and brutal. Miners earned a decent wage, but often worked 10 to 12-hour shifts, in the candlelight and in dusty conditions. Mules were used to haul ore out of the surface initially. The mules lived underground 24/7 for a couple of years at a time as the tunnel workings were so extensive. Later, engines hauled the ore out of the mine. The rail system utilized at 2% downgrade to bring the ore to the mouth of the mine.
We continued deeper into the mine on the trolley as we learned about drilling and blasting techniques used in this and other mines at the time. Drilling was a very dangerous job that typically consisted of 1 to 2 people per team. The Copper Queen Mine, of course, was no exception and suffered numerous underground casualties during its operational period. Blasting took place toward the end of shift but was still completed with workers in the mine. We concluded the tour with a stop at the ore cart, hoist, and loading station. Complete with graffiti from the 1920s and a classic 2-seater pooper car, we wrapped up our tour and headed back to the surface. While this tour only begins to scratch the surface of such a large and productive group of mines, we still enjoyed ourselves and enjoyed looking into one of the most productive mines in Arizona history.
Back on the surface, we hopped back in the Jeep. We decided to immediately head north for our next destination and another popular mining town, Tombstone. We proceeded north on Highway 80 through Mule Pass Tunnel down towards the town Too Tough to Die. Tombstone is another one of those iconic towns where if you've been to, you know how awesome it is. While it isn't a big off-road destination, we couldn't help but stop here on our trip.
The second you enter Tombstone, you take a step back in time. Cowboys wander around and stagecoaches roll down Main Street. Old buildings and saloons remain in place where they stood back in the days when Earps and Clantons wandered these very same streets. We parked the Jeep and hopped out on foot to get a lay of the land. We had a few hours to kill before having to head back off-road to get to our overnight stop about 30 miles away.
The first thing we opted for was another mine tour. This time we'd be heading underground to explore the Good Enough Mine, discovered by Ed Shefflin himself. Ed Shefflin was a prospector who was exploring the area in 1879 and told by soldiers at the nearby Fort Huachuca the only valuable stone he would find in these hostile parts would be his own tombstone. And that's exactly what he found, the mines that would lead to his success and boom of Tombstone. The town grew from 100 to 14,000 and was home to 110 different saloons.
The Good Enough Mine was just that, good enough ore to pursue and make a profit. This, however, was primarily a silver mine. The mines in Tombstone would collectively produce 32 million ounces of silver. Eventually, hitting the water table in the deeper levels of the mine and some fires would lead to the downfall of the mines and the eventual decline of the town in the 1910s. Our tour was led by our guide Sam, and while shorter and less extensive than the Copper Queen, we still enjoyed seeing some of these original workings, artifacts, and hearing stories of conditions in the mines of this town.
Back at the surface, we bought some food and drinks at one of the oldest saloons in town, the Crystal Palace. The ornate bar and impressive paintings made it really easy to imagine this place serving ranch hands, county sheriffs, and everything in between. However, the most notable event in Tombstone history cannot be glossed over, and it seemed as if something was starting in the streets. It was near the OK Corral, October 26, 1881, when the Earps and Doc Holliday clashed with the Clantons and McLowrys over a political, personal, and family feud that left 3 dead on the streets of Tombstone. Those 3 that die are buried today in the nearby Boot Hill graveyard, along with plenty of other innocent and guilty citizens alike who were laid to rest for numerous and often interesting other reasons.
Nevertheless, it was nearly 4 o'clock and we still had 30 miles of dirt to cover before our overnight stop. We departed Tombstone and aired down as we set our sights east on Middlemarch Road. This historic trail once connected Fort Bowie and Fort Huachuca and passes through the scenic Dragoon Mountains. After about 10 miles of trail, we began to climb. The scenery immediately improved. Eventually, we reached the nearly 6,000-foot Middlemarch Pass and began to head down. The trail got rougher and narrower. A short time later, we decided to take a detour off the main road to see if we could find an old mine up the wash. After about a mile of driving on some off-camber washouts and larger rocks, which we got to use 4-wheel drive on, we arrived at the ruins of yet another mining camp. Not much is known about this site deep in the Dragoons, unfortunately. We retraced our route and continued east into the Sulphur Springs Valley.
We had made it to the east side of the Dragoons, began to head north towards Cochise Stronghold. Just a few minutes later, we had reached our overnight stop and last cabin of the trip, Half Moon Ranch. Nestled in the shadow of towering walls of Cochise Stronghold, this old ranch house was plenty big enough for the two of us. This would be our base for the night and allow us to get a good night's rest and a shower. We were quite impressed with the cabin's amenities, which even included its own windmill. Darkness quickly descended and we made a quick dinner. We'd be doing burgers one more time in an effort not to waste the food that we brought. We turned in early yet again.
Next time, we wrap up days 4 and 5 of our southeastern Arizona trip as we head east across the unique landscape of Wilcox Playa. We'll visit the extensive Fort Bowie ruins before spending the night at over 8,000 feet in the Chiricahua Mountains. Then, we'll complete our journey by driving through the scenic Cave Creek Canyon and on to our ultimate goal at the end of the trail, Paradise. Paradise, Arizona, that is.